Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm Earl Beecher, your host. I'm really pleased to have as our guest today Lee Harrington. Lee is the CEO of the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation and the President CEO of the World Trade Center Association. Boy, two hats, Lee, and let's start with the Economic Development Corporation. Tell us a little bit about what it is and what the outlook is for the Los Angeles area.
All right, be glad to do that. The LAEDC, as we call it, is a county-wide economic development organization. It is a public-private partnership, nonprofit corporation, led by business, but in partnership with the county and the many communities within the county. And its focus is really on business attraction, retention, and growth, trying to grow jobs in the region, bring more economic value to the region.
Now, you're talking about attracting major businesses in, but also helping small businesses and medium-sized ones to get going.
Well, this economy is really much more of a small to medium-sized business economy now, and we work with all sizes of companies. The key is that the jobs have enough value to deserve special emphasis and work, and we work in many different sectors, but I would say that probably manufacturing, services, and technology are the three areas that we spend the most time in.
Which one's growing faster, manufacturing, services, or technology?
Well, services have been growing faster over the last few years.
That's what I thought.
People don't realize or recognize that Los Angeles County is the #1 manufacturing center in the United States.
Say that again.
It's #1 manufacturing center in the United States.
I did not know that.
We have 1 million jobs in manufacturing in the region. And it, of course, suffered during the downturn of aerospace defense, but has kind of reemerged with smaller, nimble companies, design-based companies primarily that do new product manufacturing. They're not turning out the same thing day in, day out. They're really coming up with a new design, a new product. Automobile aftermarket would be a real good example. Mag wheels, different things for cars that are sold around the world. But design is also the key element in our traditional aerospace and entertainment industries, but it's now blossomed out into biomedical, e-commerce. The fashion industry is huge in LA. Just examples of the design-based industries.
Well, fashion and entertainment, I think, are a natural.
You bet.
You gave me this with the 60-mile circle, reconnecting our neighborhood.
Right.
And you're talking about the Los Angeles County, but Orange County's in that circle.
Yes, it is.
Are you including Orange County when you're saying some of these statements as to the magnitude?
When we look at the economic environment, we really look at the regional economy, and the regional economy doesn't recognize county boundaries. So really, at least the 5 counties in Southern California would be included. You'd find 5 of them within the 60-mile circle of downtown Los Angeles, and the whole purpose of that piece is really to update the business community on some of the broader regional issues that can't be resolved at a county or a city level, that need broader planning and certainly business input into the process. Issues of transportation, moving people and goods in the region, water, myriad of issues that are really affect all of us, both in terms of business competitiveness, but also in terms of lifestyle and quality of life.
Now, you mentioned water. What's the future there? Because that is getting crucial, isn't it?
Well, water is actually one that I think at this point appears more manageable relative to being able to plan for the future. We've still got a lot of conservation potential in water, and conservation not only in residential and industry, but also conservation in agriculture, which is the largest consumer of water. So there are a lot of things we can still do to assure enough water. California is still the
largest agricultural producer of any state.
And by far the largest user of water are the farms out in this, particularly in the Central Valley, San Joaquin,
up in that area.
And Sacramento.
Yes.
But they're coming up with a lot of new ways to use water more conservatively. And so over time, I think water's manageable. We've always got to keep our eye on that one because it's an essential ingredient.
Oh, yes.
But I think that one while we're watching it closely, I think there's some more near-term issues relative to the need for more transportation infrastructure to move goods and people efficiently in the area.
You know, Los Angeles has spent billions in the subway and this new transportation system. Is it working out?
Well, we need more light rail. The key to those systems, however, is to make sure that they serve the commuting populations between work and home. And if the system isn't built on that basis, it's really not going to get people off the freeways. The Blue Line, which runs from Long Beach to LA, is full constantly. It's constantly full. It's been a major success. The Red Line, which is an underground line, just completed, I think will also prove itself over time, but much more expensive because of the underground construction.
Isn't that the one that goes to Hollywood?
It does.
Okay.
Hollywood and up to Universal.
Okay.
Right.
And that one is not as busy as the Blue Line
Well,
is.
it's newer, and one thing it has lacked is enough parking or easy access at the upper end so that people will get out of their cars and get on the Red Line. They're now adding additional parking up at the north end, and that will help in terms of getting people on the Red Line into Hollywood downtown. But it also connects the tourism venues that we have between downtown, Hollywood, and Universal.
Yes.
So it's also important in terms of supporting a more vibrant Hollywood, Universal, downtown connection.
I can't resist this. You mentioned water being crucial. There's been a lot in the news about electricity and gas.
Right.
And tell us your background with the gas company, and then maybe fill us in something there too. Well, you have the richest background. Well,
I'm glad I'm in economic development today and not gas and electricity, to tell you the truth. But I worked for Southern California Gas for 20 years, handled a broad range of things, including federal regulatory policy on energy, gas supply for many years. I did a lot of the gas acquisition work, and then ultimately the operating side of the company. What California is experiencing today, unfortunately, is success that moved faster than planning relative to energy, and a system that was put in place at the end of the year that unfortunately wasn't fully thought out and really didn't contemplate opening up the markets the way they were opened up, or at least deregulating the supply side of the markets in a shortage. They really assumed that we were going to have an overhang of supply and that would keep prices down. Well, a number of factors hit us all at once, rapidly growing markets, including the technology sector, which is a large energy consumer, population growth, and then this summer, for example, or this last winter, we had a very dry winter in the Pacific Northwest. And hydro has been a large component of the overall supply for Southern California, imported to meet the total need, and this year it's just not there. So you put all those factors together and all of a sudden you don't have enough energy. It's not going to be just a California problem, but we're dealing with the front end of the problem, the way
of a national problem before we're through.
Yes, and I guess if there's a bright spot in the whole thing, as we figure it out, we're going to be ahead of the curve, and other states in the nation are going to be kind of catching up with us. But
they're going to benefit from our experience.
Well,
is really what you're saying.
I hope they learn some things from it. I think one of the weaknesses in the system was that they opened up the supply side of the market through a bidding process, but they didn't open up the market itself, and so customers didn't have an opportunity to make choices in terms of where they were going to get their energy, whether they wanted long-term or short-term contracts. That was all basically put into an independent system operator at the state level who was simply going to buy daily energy that was offered into the system, and that works great if you've got enough, but not if you don't.
You mentioned that you were working with the Los Angeles County in particular, and I have long advocated that it's going to be necessary to get government and business and education together to really research and solve problems and move ahead as fast as we would like to.
Right. There's no question that to come up with the right answers in terms of particularly some of these large regional issues, you have to get the whole community involved. You can't have one segment do the planning and then lay it on the table and say, here it is.
Take it.
Exactly. You need to get the communities involved. Business has to understand the issues. Business is very good at asking the tough questions that need to be answered in a planning process. Educators and institutions of higher learning in particular, very important in the process because they do a lot of research and do have good ideas on different ways to do things. And that process has been missing in Southern California. It's one of the reasons for the 60-mile circle, is to try and re-engage the business community as a planning voice, make sure that our universities are connected as well, and that we have a community dialogue that ultimately delivers us the right answers.
Now, in your position, I can't think of anybody in the community who is in a more central position than you personally are for pulling these factors together.
Well, one of the things we've done at the LAEDC in the last few years, we've got some great economists. Jack Kaiser, our chief economist, is kind of known as the guru of the Southern California economy. We've got 3 other economists who work closely with him. We do consulting work with many of the agencies as an economic consultant, so we're kind of on the inside looking at the projects. But we've also basically decided that we've got to become a public policy advisor, that we've got to take all this insight that we get working one-on-one with businesses, being involved in the projects, and really develop some of the analysis that'll get us to the right conclusions. So that's one of the new directions that we've added to the LAEDC's portfolio.
They tell me we need to pause for a public service announcement. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Lee Harrington, who is the CEO of the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation. Our guest is Lee Harrington, the President, CEO of the Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, but also of the World Trade Center Association.
Right.
Now, I know there's a World Trade Center in Los Angeles, and I know there's one in Long Beach.
Yes.
Now, which one are you with?
Both.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay.
World Trade Centers are located throughout the world and throughout the United States, located in buildings that carry the World Trade Center name.
Yes.
And those buildings provide one form or another of trade information or facilitation or clubs that are centered around trade. And both LA and Long Beach have World Trade Centers, and we've been able to put together an organization that basically serves as a trade facilitator for business, for members of the trade association.
You use some nice big words there.
Yeah.
A trade facilitator.
Right.
What do you do?
Well, let me just give you an example in our economy. Only 10% of the businesses in LA County in the manufacturing sector, and only 10% in the service sector, sell their products or do their business internationally. In other words, 90% is focused either on the local economy or the national economy. So what we do is really work with businesses to realize and identify where potential markets are overseas for their products or their services, also where suppliers may be overseas that could provide them with a lower cost source of a component that's part of their manufacturing process, and then work with them on the transaction and the financing to get them over the hurdles, the fear factor, if you will, of doing an international transaction.
I'm going to hit this fear factor because when you said you can find sources overseas,
Sure.
Are we exporting all the jobs out of the United States? I have heard that,
Sure.
you know, oh, they're exporting the employment and laying people off here.
Yeah.
We're headed
Yeah.
for the...
Yeah.
Okay, what's the
it's
truth?
rubric. The truth is, and certainly for Southern California, we've been by far a net gainer in the NAFTA opening of the border to Mexico. We've exported much more than has been imported. It does cause transfers of some operations.
Displacement goes here
some
and there,
displacement. There's no question about it. But we have not lost the high end of what LA is so good at, which is the design-based industries that we have here.
Okay.
Some of the manufacturing may not actually be done here, but we'll be designing the products, we'll be merchandising the products, we'll be wholesaling the products out of the region. As I said earlier, we're still the largest manufacturing center in the United States, so it isn't like all the manufacturers have left town. But so many of them have just been able to make it on the local market that they haven't thought about adding 30 or 40% additional sales in the global markets.
The more I learn about the global economy, the more I see people everywhere want a standard of living like they see here.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's tremendous demand. But when you look at the incomes, and I've been looking at the incomes of countries all over the world, the average person earns $400 a year. How can they afford? It seems to me that there's a lot of opportunity to go into those countries and to teach and train them so that they are developing their own standard of living and then doing trade with us. And
sure. Well, you know, and we don't necessarily lose in that translation. The amount of export from the United States in the last 10 years equals the amount of export over the entire history of the United States. So I think we've become much more aggressive in trade and benefited a lot more from trade. If you look at what our economy has done in the last 10 years, that's where we've had the resurgence. So yes, there have been some companies who've moved operations here or there, or some industries that have been created, for instance, in India in software, which is so large these days and is so easily transferable through new technology.
Oh, yes.
But Silicon Valley's booming at the same time that India is creating software. So it's really just everyone benefiting from a bigger economic activity.
I'm going to ask you to put yourself into the shoes of our viewers, particularly a businessman, and tell him or her how to approach your organization or some government organization or whatever, so that they can get ideas and help in beginning to expand.
Okay, I'll start with the LAEDC there, the Economic Development Corporation. We have a group of regional managers who are spread throughout Los Angeles County. They work at a local level with local businesses and cities. They are available to work with any business who has an issue that's impacting whether or not they want to remain here, whether they want to come here, or whether they want to expand here. And those issues can range far and wide. Our people will actually go out and meet with them, talk to them about what their business issues are. They don't have all the answers themselves, but they know where all the resources are.
All right. Now, they can contact you here if they're here locally.
Sure.
There are people that are going to be particularly interested. This show is shown across the country. If they're not right in the Los Angeles area,
right.
but through the World Trade Center, and there are World Trade Centers all across the United States.
That's right. That's right. Many major cities have a World Trade Center.
And you're associated with all of them?
We are, because we do both import and export work, and when we have a company who's interested in a particular market, we can go to that World Trade Center and ask them to do some research relative to who in that market would be interested in the product or providing a supply to a company in our region as well. One of the things that our regional managers do if they find a company that's interested in trade issues is to bring the World Trade Center trade experts in to work on that specific project.
Is there a charge for this?
For the basic facilitation that the LAEDC does, no. It's free, and we've been able to sponsor that over the years. We get help from the county. For more sophisticated trade transactions, the World Trade Center will provide consulting, or through a membership arrangement provide that consulting. And it's very high value, low cost.
Now, do you also provide seminars and conferences and where groups get together and just interchange and information? And
that's the outreach piece, where you're trying to get the general community more up to speed on what the opportunities are. There will be information in a general sense about trade and the trade opportunities. That then leads to some companies wanting to pursue it further, and that's where you get into the one-on-one consulting.
Yes. And you keep saying Los Angeles County. Is there something similar in Orange County, or do you reach out to Orange County?
Well, we've actually been helping some of the cities in Orange County who are particularly interested in international trade. There is a trade center there, but it's not active right now, and so we've been helping fill that gap.
So you wouldn't be offended if somebody from Orange County calls you? And
No, no. We certainly, if a city wanted that sort of service to be provided to their business base, we would definitely come out and talk to them. We've done it in the Inland Empire area as well over time. So it's just all trying to fill the gaps that are out there right now. And over time, there'll be more World Trade Centers created as more and more businesses get interested in those opportunities.
Where is most of the trade taking place? Is it because of NAFTA that we're primarily in Canada and Mexico, or are you finding that the Pacific Rim is opening up, or what?
Well, the Pacific Rim is definitely where it's happening, in addition to the North America-Mexico trade agreement.
Well, what about the slump in business in Japan?
It has definitely slowed things down. I was just in Japan 2 months ago on a business mission.
Yes.
And they're clearly not through all of their issues yet. They've got some more shakeout to do in their financial markets, in the transparency issues of their companies. They have become very interested, finally, in attracting capital from outside of Japan, and are actually thinking about becoming as aggressive as some of the regions in the United States in economic development. And that's a radical change for them. But they recognize that it's attracting foreign capital, it's attracting creative people from outside the country, it's attracting businesses that fit well with businesses in Japan. And one of the things we found when we were there is that there are a lot of middle market businesses in Japan, particularly in the Kansai region around Osaka, that are a very good fit as a strategic partner with the types and sizes of businesses that we have in Los Angeles.
Oh, really?
So we're going to be facilitating a lot of two-way transactions there. Not all trade, some will be strategic investment, but I think it will actually be beneficial to both of the economies to kind of share some of the unique capabilities that the various companies have.
They tell me we need to pause for a public service announcement. We're here with Lee Harrington, the President CEO of the World Trade Center Association. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Our guest is Lee Harrington, the President and CEO of the World Trade Center Association. And you were just in Japan not too long ago.
Right.
And also, I'm curious, what's happened in Hong Kong since the British returned it to China?
Well, we actually did a visit. I wanted to find out more about the trade programs in Hong Kong because they're second to none in trade, and developed the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, which is the real mover and shaker in Hong Kong. I think there's a lot going on. I think it's a mix of things. Hong Kong has always been the way out and the way into China, and certainly still serves that purpose for many businesses in many countries, even Japan, for example. At the same time, there are major capabilities being developed in places like Shanghai, where you can go direct
into mainland China.
Into mainland China. So both avenues are available, and finding partners either way is possible. I think Hong Kong will continue to be very strategically positioned, and they really see their ability to market to the world on behalf of the businesses in China as a huge opportunity.
So Hong Kong is really opening up China rather than China closing down Hong Kong.
Well, I think on balance that's absolutely the right analysis. I do see some impact in terms of the new government control, but as a businessman moving in and out of Hong Kong, it's probably easier than any place in the world these days. You get into the new airport, you can jump on a train and be right downtown Hong Kong almost immediately. They are so efficient. For example, export goods there spend 45 seconds in customs. You know, in the United States, it's hours or days for customs. So they understand where the value is that they can create. And
maybe we need to study what they're doing.
well, I think we do.
How about Taiwan?
Taiwan, we spent about a week 2 years ago. Just happened to go during the earthquake. So we were there for the event.
The big event.
Seems like, you know, when you're from Los Angeles, you tend to
you take it with you.
Take it with you. Or
blame you for
I've had the same thing happen in Japan. But Taiwan, I think, is very healthy. This issue with China is not new. It's simply on a bit of a different plane right now with some of the I think some of the dialogue changing with the new president and all that. The key to remember is that Taiwan, of course, which went through their industrial revolution over the past 20 years, has become a major investor in mainland China. I mean, much of what they used to do in Taiwan, they're doing today in China. And so
the ties are getting stronger.
The ties are there, but the politics are also there. And so I think what we see in Taiwan is a desire to diversify more globally. We've seen a lot of interest by the Taiwanese in investment in the United States. They're particularly interested in the biomedical area. As a new area. They did get quite involved in the e-commerce.com area a few years ago with mixed results. But
Lee, I have to tell you, she's telling me it's time. I'll have to have you back for a second show one of these first days because there's so much information. Thank you so much
My
for
pleasure.
being our guest.
Thank you for having me.
Adventures in Life. And I want to thank our viewing audience for joining us, and please feel free to call his company and get the information you need. And meanwhile, thank you for joining us, and please join us soon again for more Adventures in Life.